In August of 2023, more than 160 cargo ships were sitting off the coast of Panama, waiting for permission to cross. None of them were broken down. None of them were waiting on paperwork. They were waiting on water. The lake that powers the Panama Canal, the one that lifts ships 85 feet into the air and sets them back down on the other side, was running low. And the agency that operates one of the most important waterways on the planet started rationing it, one ship at a time. That crisis ended. The rain came back, the lake refilled. And then, this summer, the canal started cutting again. Most people picture the Panama Canal as a ditch cut through the jungle, a straight channel connecting two oceans. That's the Suez Canal. Panama is a different kind of machine entirely. There's no cutting through at sea level because the land in the middle of Panama sits too high. So ships are lifted instead. A series of locks raises each vessel 85 feet up to Gatun Lake, an artificial reservoir created by damming the Chagres River more than a century ago. The ship sails across the lake itself, and a second set of locks lowers it back down to the ocean on the far side. Every one of those lift and lower cycles runs entirely on gravity. No pumps push water uphill. It simply flows downhill from the lake into the chambers, and every time a ship transits, tens of millions of gallons of fresh water go with it, out into the ocean, gone for good. A single passage uses somewhere around 52 million gallons, and that lake isn't just an industrial reservoir. Gatun and a neighboring lake called Alajuela supply drinking water to more than half of Panama's population, including the capital. The canal and the country are drinking from the same cup. Under normal conditions, this works, because Panama's rainy season delivers enormous volumes of water every year, more than enough to refill the lake after the dry months. The entire system depends on that rain arriving roughly on schedule. In 2023, it didn't. A strong El Niño pattern developed that year, and across Central America it meant less rain, later rain, and hotter temperatures that pulled moisture out of the ground faster than usual. Panama recorded one of its driest years since record-keeping began in 1950. The Panama Canal Authority, known as the ACP, watched the lake fall through the first half of the year and responded the only way it could, by using less water. In March, they lowered the maximum draft, the depth a ship's hull is allowed to sit in the water, which forced some vessels to carry lighter loads or leave cargo behind entirely. In July, they capped daily transits at 32, down from a typical 36 to 38. By November, that number had fallen to 24. Within a few months, it would drop again to 18. The backlog grew almost immediately. Ships that once waited a day or two for their turn were waiting more than a week. At the worst of it, some vessels sat for close to 3 weeks, and the queue on both sides of the canal held over 150 ships. Because slots through the canal were suddenly scarce, the ACP's existing auction system, where shipping companies bid for a priority booking, got dramatically more expensive. Some operators paid over $2 million for a single reservation just to avoid the wait. The ripple effects reached well beyond the shipping industry. Grain shipments from the American Midwest, liquefied natural gas headed for Asia, and pharmaceutical shipments, including insulin, all routed through a canal that was suddenly moving a third fewer ships than usual. Some carriers rerouted around Africa or through the Suez Canal instead, adding weeks to their journeys and burning far more fuel to get there. For a waterway that handles roughly 6% of all seaborne trade on Earth, a 30% cut in daily capacity wasn't a local inconvenience. It was a stress test on the entire shipping network, and the network felt it. If you're finding this useful, this is the kind of infrastructure deep dive I publish here on Engineering Your World. Subscribing helps me keep making them. The canal wasn't starting from zero on water conservation. When the expanded Neo-Panamax locks opened in 2016, engineers built them with something the original locks never had: water-saving basins. These are shallow reservoirs beside each lock chamber that catch water on its way out and reuse it on the next transit, instead of letting all of it drain straight to the sea. Those basins recover as much as 60% of the water used in each cycle, which is part of why the newer locks use noticeably less water per transit than the older ones, even though they move much larger ships. During the drought, the ACP leaned harder on every tool the system had. Chambers were cross-filled between locks operating side by side, sharing water instead of drawing fresh volume from the lake each time. Scheduling was tightened to group similar-sized ships together and minimize wasted lockages. Every one of these measures bought the lake time. None of them could conjure rain that wasn't falling. The real fix had to be bigger. In February of 2025, the Panama Canal Authority's board approved a new reservoir on the Río Indio, a river basin north of the current watershed. It's a $1.6 billion project, and once it's finished, it will substantially increase how much water the system can store, giving the canal a buffer for the next dry year, instead of running down to the edges of what Gatun holds. That reservoir will also flood land where people currently live. Roughly 400 families will need to be relocated, and the authority has been running a census and community consultations since 2024 to work that out. Construction isn't scheduled to begin until 2027, and the reservoir won't be holding meaningful water until sometime in the early 2030s, which tells you something important about infrastructure at this scale. The crisis unfolded in months. The fix takes the better part of a decade. Weather is cyclical, and by 2025, the pattern had flipped. A shift to La Niña conditions brought steady rainfall back to Panama, and Gatun Lake climbed. Full 50-foot draft operations returned. Daily transits climbed back toward the high 30s. Canal revenue hit a record $5.7 billion for the 2025 fiscal year. By early 2026, the reservoirs were so full that the ACP said it didn't expect to need transit restrictions at all that year. The dry season was among the wettest on record. Then two things happened at once. The first was geopolitical. In early 2026, conflict in the Middle East effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil and gas choke points on the planet. Liquefied natural gas and fuel cargoes that had always moved through the Persian Gulf had to find another way to Asia, and a lot of them found it through Panama. Traffic surged. Transits averaged around 38 ships a day, and at the peak, the canal was handling 40 to 41, above its normal working capacity of about 36. Waiting times climbed again, and in April, one vessel paid an extra $4 million at auction just to jump the queue. Canal revenue is now running ahead of forecast for the year. So the canal entered the summer of 2026 running at maximum capacity in a record year, with more ships wanting through than it could comfortably pass. And the second thing was the water. In June, NOAA confirmed that El Niño conditions had developed in the tropical Pacific, and forecasters expect it to strengthen through the end of the year. The ACP's own read moved fast. The probability of a severe El Niño event went from about 25% in April to 81% by July. The cuts started in July. Maximum draft at the Neo-Panamax locks came down to 49.5 feet, then to 49 feet, with another reduction to 48.5 scheduled for the middle of August. And it isn't just draft. On July 25th, the canal suspended its short-notice booking auctions entirely, cutting the number of daily reservation slots from 36 down to 34. That's the same lever it pulled in 2023. Only this time it pulled it before the lake had a problem. But look closely at those dates, because that's the part that actually matters. In 2023, the ACP cut after the lake fell. In 2026, it started cutting before. The first draft reduction was announced in early June, while the reservoirs were still high, on the strength of a forecast rather than a measurement. That is what an institution looks like after it has learned something. The Panama Canal has survived droughts before, in 2016, in 2019, and long before either of those. What made 2023 different is that it forced a system built more than a century ago to admit its old margins weren't wide enough for the climate it now operates in. And what makes right now interesting is that the canal is being squeezed from both ends at the same time. More ships want through than ever, because a choke point on the other side of the world closed, and the water that lets them through is about to get scarcer because of a weather pattern nobody controls. The Río Indio reservoir won't be finished for years. Several dry seasons will arrive before it is. So for now, the canal is running the same system it ran in 2023, with better instincts about when to start conserving and not much more water than it had. The lesson engineers are carrying forward isn't how to survive one bad year. It's how to build enough slack into a system half the world quietly depends on. So the next drought is something the canal is ready for, instead of something it has to improvise through.